It's our pleasure to be here this afternoon with you. We're going to be talking, our title is The Best 10 Minutes, but it's actually going to take us half an hour to do this. And the idea behind this presentation is it's a bit of a personal reflection to find ways to increase your effectiveness, your influence, and your impact on the work that you do, both as a recruiter and possibly as an HR leader. A little bit about Newman HR. So we basically focus on HR support for small business. We help with a wide variety of issues, as Jesse has already mentioned, including recruiting and outplacement coaching. I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Brian, now.
Thanks, Frank. And as Frank said, we're talking about using the 10 minutes a day. And if you only had 10 minutes a day, how would you change to be your people that you're working with, whether or not you're, as a recruiter, you're trying to help your clients or the people that are applying for jobs to go from being indifferent to committed. And that's what we want to focus on. We want to focus on how do we make the people that we're working with, to get them be more, maximize their work, to be more effective, to get the best selves out of themselves, and to become great leaders and to work effectively. So we want to make sure we can help people to become, we want to look at different ways that people can become indifferent to committed in their work. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at is, what do you need for anyone to be effective in their workplace? And when you're working with employees, whether or not you're recruiting people, you want to make sure that people are productive and they get their work done. So if you're going to do some recruiting and you want to get people in the door, you want to make sure that they're going to be productive. They're going to be committed to their work. They're going to want to go to work every day and give the best that they can, and that they have passion for their work. If they have all of those three, being productive, they're committed to their work, and they're passionate, that's going to drive their engagement in the work, and ultimately that's going to help the revenues of the organization, and it's going to increase the profitability all around. It's going to be good for the organization, good for the team. Now, if there's engagement, you'll get that. But if the engagement starts to fall and people are losing their interest in their work, or they're not engaged, the passion will fall. People's commitment will not be there as much, and people will not be as motivated to be as productive. When all of that happens, then the revenues will definitely fall, and it will be have negative impact for the organization. So I have a little bit of a question for everybody here today, and the question is why do you think people leave an organization? And do you think people leave because of the working conditions of the organization? So I'm taking a poll right now just to get your idea. What's the best way to? What are the reasons that people leave the organization? Is it the working conditions? Is it the compensation? Is it because of the boss? Is it the interesting work? The job is not interesting enough for the people that are doing the work. So keeping that in mind, the results are usually that people leave an organization because of the boss. If they're not happy with the boss, that's going to be one of the major reasons that people are going to leave an organization.
Very good. Well, thank you, Brian. So we want to talk now about what I've called the 5 C's of creative leadership. And I've evolved these over a career of 40 years in HR. And basically, I've seen lots of opportunities in HR. I've seen lots of issues in HR where people have not been successful, and often it's because of a lack of one or more of these factors. And so we've really got a 5C model, and the first is connecting. So it's making sure that you're making contact with people as a very first step, and this is whether you're in a recruiting role or whether you're a people manager. The second is around clarity. It's making sure we're clear on our expectations. Thirdly, we want to be able to coach people effectively rather than manage them. And then the last 2 elements compassion, and courage are really personal attributes that we're looking for great leaders and particularly great HR people to have as part of their portfolio. And so as we talk about these things today, I want you to kind of think and reflect a little bit about your experiences and also where you might want to sharpen your saw as you move ahead in your career. So the first element is connect. And to be quite honest, if you do nothing else but connect well with your staff, with your team, with your candidates, this is the most important thing you can do. Now, until recently, of course, we wanted you to be physically present. We wanted managers and leaders to be active in the workplace, to be walking around. The concept of management by walking around comes across. Today, we're doing it more virtually. But I think it's important to make sure that you are being virtually present with people if that's how you're working, and making sure that you're actually taking the time to connect. And when you connect, we want you to be mentally present. So we want you to pay attention. We want you to be in the moment. And one of the elements of great leaders is the fact that they can focus attention so that when someone is speaking to them, there is the impression that the leader was just speaking to me. And if you fail to do that basic connection, it's going to make a huge impact on your ability to influence people. But just that physical connection, it's getting out of your office, it's making a phone call, absolutely key for growing your influence. The second element, the second C, is clarify. And I've seen more issues in HR because people are not clear about whether it's their roles, whether it's the organizational structure, whether it's the job description, whether it's their objectives. And so as a leader, particularly in HR, it's important that we're clear in terms of what are the expectations for the job, what are the elements, what are the successful traits of people in this business. And particularly if you're, as a recruiter, people want to know, what does it take to be successful here? And that's the first question they ask when they start talking to you as a candidate, but it may be the first question they ask when they get to the workplace. And so to the extent you can clarify that, it's huge. I've seen more interpersonal disputes because I expect Mary to be doing something different from Fred. When they don't meet those expectations, you see interpersonal conflict. And a lot of the conflict I see in organizations is not because of people, but it's because of poor process clarity, uncertainty. So to the extent that you as an individual can clarify key elements of the job, it's going to make you incredibly successful. The third C is coaching. And here we want to shift from being a manager to being a coach. And we have a simple 3-circle model that we use for our coaching practice. It starts off with, how can I help? So how can I, as a leader or as an HR influencer, help you to achieve your goals? The next part is, how do we fix it? And what can we do to fix it? So again, it's that we element, it's working together. And then finally, you're going to turn it around to what will you do as an individual, putting the onus back on them, getting their engagement, getting their involvement in the process. And that's a very simple model, but the idea is it's going to develop people and bring them along. Brian, can you share some from your coaching background?
Sure, and if I could add 2 more C's to this whole 5 C's that Frank is talking about today, I'd like to share the words collaborative and coactive. I believe when anyone is working as a coach, whether or not you're coaching your employees, you're coaching the senior management at an organization, or you're coaching people that you may be recruiting, you want to work in a collaborative approach, and you want to be coactive. You want to work together. And by working together, you'll find a way that you as a coach can help the person that you're working with. You can find a way that together we can fix the issue together. And you can find a way that you'll find a better way to resolve the solution, to find a good solution. And I've worked with people at all levels of organizations, and I found when people are working together and they're collaborating with each other, and it's an open discussion, it's not one-way directed, that's when a solution could be found for the betterment for the people within that you're coaching, and also better for the organization as well.
Thank you very much, Brian. The next C is courage. And I think more than ever, this is absolutely fundamental. And this distinguishes great HR people from average HR people. I've seen more careers ruined because people were not given feedback and honest feedback. And I remember early in my career, I was a young HR recruiter, and I was pretty good, and I certainly told people that. And finally, one manager, senior manager, took me aside and he said, "Frank, let me give you some feedback." And he said, "Frank, you're the most arrogant SOB I've ever met." And it absolutely shocked me because I'd had 10 years with this company and no one had ever said a word. And this man told me the truth, and it was so impactful. It absolutely changed my behavior, and so I thank him every day for that feedback all those years ago, because he had the courage to give me some tough feedback. And how often in our organizations do we pass by people? Do we not give them the real truth? Do we not tell them why they're not being promoted? Do we not tell them about the fact that they're chewing gum and they're doing inappropriate things in the workplace? Uh, and so it does take courage to do that. And I think as an HR organization, or we need to make sure we are doing that on a regular basis, because you can't have a timid HR organization. The other thing that it takes courage is to make tough decisions. A lot of our clients phone us and they say, "Well, we've got an employee here who's been here for 5 years. They're really not working out." And but they've been afraid for many years to make a decision and say, "This person doesn't fit with the organization." And so they lead that person on. And in the end, we have a long-term employee who thought they were doing well, and suddenly the rug is pulled out from under them. And so it takes courage for us to make those tough decisions. And sometimes we need to influence the management team we work with to make those tough decisions, and we have to push back on them. The final thing to think about is reflecting on our own self. So it's recognizing that as individuals, we all have limitations. And so we have an obligation to confront our own limitations and have the courage to admit that we're perhaps not as good at doing writing reports, or maybe it's interviewing or performance coaching. But it takes courage to do that, and then to hold the mirror up in front of our face and say, this is where I need to be, and I'm not there right now. So thinking about that is absolutely critical. And the great HR people have courage, and that will really distinguish you from the pack. The final C is compassion. And our models of leadership over many years have changed, and we now reflect much more strongly on the compassionate leader. And there's a couple of elements to this. One is the fact that we need to be compassionate for other people. We need to have empathy, because if we have that, we're going to be able to engage people more, and we're also going to make better decisions. I recall a case several years ago, when I was an HR director, and an employee came to me and said, "My spouse is dying of cancer, and I've been told they have 3 months to live." And so this lady worked in a warehouse, and she said, "I can't keep working." And so I made the decision to put her on sick leave so she was able to spend time with her husband. He eventually passed, and she came back to work, and she was just incredibly grateful. So I realized that that might be something that would happen to other people. And so I developed the first compassionate leave policy in Canada. Fast forward 2 years, and the federal minister of health is sitting down with the president of our company, Paul Lucas, and having a discussion about healthcare, and casually mentioned, "Well, are there any innovative policies that you guys have done recently?" And so Paul picked up my policy and handed it to her. And then over the course of the next few weeks and months, that policy became embedded in employment insurance in terms of the compassionate leave plan for Canada. So that's an example where I bent the rules and we use compassion to create a benefit for not only our employees, but also across the country. That clearly wasn't the intent when I started, but it was something that took place over time. And again, had I not had that compassionate empathy, that employee would have suffered. And also remembering that people come to work not for the emotion or not for the intellectual challenge of being at work, but for the emotional connections. And so to the extent that as a leader, as an HR manager, you can generate that compassion, you can generate that empathy, people are going to be more open to you. They're going to open up to you. They're going to confide in you. and building those emotional connections are more important than ever, particularly during COVID, when we know many of our team members, our staff, our candidates have suffered through loss. And so this is a tremendous time for HR to take that compassionate stance, and making sure that you're being yourself. And again, just being honest and open with people is probably the best you can do at this point. But never forget, extending that extra piece of compassion is a powerful tool. So the final point I want to close with a little bit is just to be conscious of your role as a leader. And whether you're a people manager, whether you're an HR director or an HR recruiter, you are a leader. And so I always tell leaders that you are always on stage. So people are always watching what you do, how you act, what is your mood. I've seen cases where the president or leaders of the companies have come into the office and they're absolutely dejected because of something that's happened, and that goes around the office very quickly. So while we don't necessarily need people to be cheerleaders all the time, we do need to understand that people are watching you. So every move you make, every step you take, as the song goes, it's being watched. So be conscious of that. Set yourself up to make sure that you are embodying, the 5 C's, because it will make a difference not only for you but also for your staff. So that I'm going to turn it over to Brian again.
Yes, and as Frank said, our presentation is only 30 minutes, and a presentation is only as good as people that are watching the presentation, are participating, are able to take some of the things that they learned or that we're talking about today and put it into best practice and to apply it in their day-to-day work and at their organization. So with that in mind, I'm going to call everybody to call of action, and I'm going to ask if everybody can take out a small piece of paper if you have. And as I'm talking over the next little while, I would like you to think about which one of these C's, maybe 2 or 3 of these C's, that you can work on and start applying right away as soon as tomorrow, and to see if there's a way that you can apply it with the people that you work with. So when I look at this slide, I see the gentleman on the left, and for some people, or a lot of us, we may think of Terry Fox. It's a gentleman that we look at, and he seems to be having the same challenges that Terry Fox had. But just like Terry Fox, this gentleman looks like he's moving ahead and he's going forward. And although he has challenges, he's finding a way to make things better. And on the right-hand side, if you can look at the 5 C's here, it looks like a wheel, and a wheel of motion. And like Rick Hansen had his wheel of motion, all of us want to have our own wheel of motion, how we can move forward. And so with that in mind, I'm going to ask you, that this may be one of your points that you want to work on, the connect. You can ask yourself, how can I connect to another person within the organization? Is there someone else that I can connect with that I haven't connected with before? Maybe that's someone that you can look at connecting with over the next little while. Frank, a little while ago, talked about compassion. He talked about the person whose husband had passed away in the organization that he worked with. Maybe you can show compassion of you're thinking about someone that you know who's gone through a challenging time over the period of COVID, and you think maybe I can go and talk to him or her about what he or she is going through and show some more compassion to this person. And the part about courage, all of us at some points and at work, where we might be a little bit reluctant to talk to somebody. We might have had a conflict with that person. So maybe you're thinking about somebody that you've worked with, or maybe somebody that you are feeling a little bit shy to go and talk to. So with a little bit of courage, maybe you can think, I'm going to make a point of setting up a meeting with this person. I have courage to work with this person, and I want to set up a better relationship with him or her. And then there again is the coach. And maybe there's a person that, whether or not it's someone in leadership, an employee, or someone that you're recruiting, and you think this guy has got a great deal of potential, but I think he needs a little bit of work in terms of a little bit of coaching. So maybe I'm going to make a point of coaching him so that if he is able to be successful and get a job, it's not only going to be good for him, it's going to be good for our organization and for many reasons as well. I want to take that time, and it's going to be the benefit for everybody. And the final C that is outlined here is clarity. And I think that sometimes people need clarity in their own jobs. We need to clarify for them. So maybe we should ask ourselves, is there something that I can clarify for this particular job that this person is working on? Is something about the job description? He seems like he needs that extra time. And maybe it could be someone that I am recruiting for or someone within the organization. So I would suggest that you take 2 or 3 of these 5 C's and figure out which one are you going to act on tomorrow and how are you going to act on it and to move forward.
Very good. Thank you very much, Brian. So I guess I'll open up for any on the chat, or whether people can ask live questions. We'll be happy to explore it further. And as Brian says, this is an opportunity for kind of a little personal introspection. And even if you take just one of these elements and you spend 10 minutes on it a day, you're going to see some remarkable progress there. And again, sometimes it's a question of having to take the unpleasant tasks and tackle those as you move ahead. So I guess I'll open it up. If there are any questions for Brian and I, we'll be happy to chat some further.
I have a question for anyone that may be watching. If anybody's willing to share, if there's any specific situation in the 5 C's that we've talked about and you think that you're having a challenge within your own organization and you think, or someone, people that you're dealing with or working with, and maybe that may make you think about a situation at your workplace. If you want to bring out and share with us in a discussion, we'd be happy to look at that as well.